Greetings and welcome to EHA Unplugged, the official podcast channel of the European Hematology Association, EHA.
Hello, so I am Isabel Olivera, a medical writer at the European Hematology Association, and I have here with me today Kostas Stamatopoulos. He's a professor of hematology and he's the research director of the Institute of Applied Biosciences at Research in Greece.
Hello, Isabel.
Thank you for being with us here today. We are here because we are interested in learning more about your career. You are trained as a medical doctor and as a researcher. And we wanted to understand first what place these two positions have played in your career.
They were always linked, and I could not distinguish one from the other. In the end, I think that a reason why I became a hematologist is that I realized that there were so many opportunities for doing research. And particularly, I was very interested since the very beginning into molecular biology. And hematology offered a great opportunity for that.
So, do you work with patients today?
I still work with patients today, but in a different function. So since I moved from the hospital to the research institute, that happened 12 years ago, things were different. So it's different things that you can do from a research institute. And a thing that I decided to try at that time was to engage scientists from other disciplines, in particular health psychologists and data scientists, to work together towards supporting patients in care. For us, this is a major priority. How can you ensure that patients get what they deserve through being better informed and empowered in managing their disease? It's for me, it was an entirely new path, but it was my way of doing things that could be, let's call it, directly relevant for patients. Because what we do in research should always be addressing patient needs, but it can take time between what you are doing today and what will be impactful years later.
You have mentioned why you got interested in hematology, but could you also explain why you became focused on CLL?
It was a choice of, I would say, common sense and necessity. I don't think I'm planning things in life, ever. And even hematology was not planned. It just came about. I was always interested in molecular biology, as I told you. I liked understanding how things work. And it happened that my first mentor, Dimitris Lukopoulos, happened to be a hematologist. So as a medical student, I was exposed to things like DNA and recombinant DNA techniques. That was the 80s, through his lessons. So while I was serving as what we call doctor in a small province, in a small village, while doing that, I was translating. It's something I also like doing. I was translating books in molecular biology and biochemistry from English to Greek. And then there were some molecular biology terms that I couldn't translate. So I went to him, and he said, "We have a molecular biology lab. Would you want to join?" And I did. So I knew that cancer was more interesting to me than other diseases. So when I decided to stay, I started in lymphoid cancer in particular. I was very fascinated by the complex processes through which lymphocytes, they can become cancers and give rise to leukemias and lymphomas, including CLL. So I was very intrigued by the mechanisms of lymphocytes, how they can ensure diversity, how they can ensure that we can defend ourselves. And I happened to have the immense lack of collaborating with a major pathology lab in Athens. So all of a sudden I had access to a huge collection of relevant material. And my first area, the first thing that interested me a lot was lymphomas, in particular follicular lymphoma. CLL started being interesting for me almost 30 years ago. And then over time, I understood that it was a thing that would be, that would still have many, many unexplored areas. Then we moved with my wife from Athens, where we were both working, to Thessaloniki. And I said that it was by chance, because we had never planned going there, and that CLL was a choice of necessity in the end, for the very simple reason that in Thessaloniki, I wouldn't have access to such valuable, well-characterized, well-processed material as in Athens. Now, CLL is a bird of a different feather amongst lymphomas, in that you can get the material that you need in order to run your studies easily from a simple blood drawing. So it would be far easier for me to get the material that I needed, which is why 25 years ago I shifted the focus of my work from, let's call them lymphomas predominantly located in lymph nodes, nodal lymphomas, to lymphomas with a leukemic presentation like CLL.
25 years ago, the B-cell receptor was shown to be central to the pathogenesis of CLL. How did this discovery influence your career?
You are absolutely right by saying that it was 25 years ago, but do you know when this information was incorporated in recommendations about how to manage patients? It was only in 2018.
Okay.
So it took 19 years before this knowledge
Yes.
became known
Yes.
to implementing it in routine. And it took almost 13 years before we understood why the immunoglobulin genes and the immunoglobulins in particular can be critical for understanding this disease, to developing drugs that target how the immunoglobulin functions. I think that's a very good example for what I was saying before, that it can take years between a discovery and a change in how we manage and practice patients. But to your question, how it affected my work. Even before concentrating, I would say, almost 100% on CLL, my main research was immunoglobulin genes. So molecular analysis of the immunoglobulins. Now, I was doing that in follicular lymphoma, I was doing that in diffuse large B-cell lymphoma. I had started doing that in CLL, but then seeing the two seminal publications by Nick Chiorasi and Frida Stevenson and their groups made me invest more. So in the end, it assisted in, concentrating my attention on one particular area in one particular direction.
Was it at the time that you showed that there is an improved survival for CLL patients when they have a mutated immunoglobulin gene?
It was Frida and Nick who first reported that, and then we contributed to this knowledge. Our contribution, if I may use the term, to the field was to delving deeper into a phenomenon that was first described in CLL. It's called stereotypy of the B-cell receptor, stereotypy of the immunoglobulin. And in a minute I'll try to explain what this is about. So CLL is a disease of B lymphocytes. B lymphocytes are a critical part of our adaptive immune system. The adaptive immune system has to recognize an immense number of elements, particularly pathogens. Now, pathogens may have different structures called antigens that are recognized by lymphocytes, and the recognition is mediated via the immunoglobulin, the B-cell receptor. Now, the repertoire of antigens is immense, and for us to be able to respond to that, we need an equally immense repertoire of B-cell receptors. There are estimates that we can have up to trillions of different B-cell receptors, meaning trillions of different B lymphocytes. Now, this is why the immunoglobulin is kind of a molecular signature for each B lymphocyte. Let's move now to CLL. What is CLL? CLL is a clone of B lymphocytes. In other words, a population of cells from a common ancestral cell. The common ancestral cell carries a particular immunoglobulin, so all its progeny will carry the same immunoglobulin. So, if you look at different patients, you are looking at different clones. The immune system is diverse, the immunoglobulins are diverse. So I told you that we can have up to 1 trillion, if not more, of different immunoglobulins. So in principle, if things were happening by chance, you would need to study 1 trillion patients with CLL. There are not 1 trillion patients, obviously, to find 2 with identical immunoglobulins. And yet, we and others have managed to identify individuals with identical or very similar immunoglobulins in small groups of 300-400 patients. That was 25 years ago. Yeah. So just consider 1 in 1 trillion versus a few in a few hundreds. It cannot be by chance. So it means that it is likely driven by something. Now, studies that we did over the years focused on this phenomenon, stereotypy, and what makes me very happy today is that thanks to a collaborative effort of different institutions from all over the world, we managed to convey the message that this stereotypy occurs at an unprecedented scale in CLL, and that if you have different patients expressing the same or similar, highly similar immunoglobulin, you can consider them as a subset. Some of these subsets have a very different biology, unique biology, different from other subsets, and this information regarding subsets assists in running dedicated research that helps identify what is happening in particular groups of patients. In other words, it's a powerful tool for overcoming the very pronounced heterogeneity of CLL.
So each one of these subsets will be susceptible to different drugs?
In principle, yes. But in reality, we should be grateful as healthcare professionals that we have so very effective options these days. I mean, things changed dramatically compared to 10 years ago, even. There has been a revolution in how we manage CLL. Still, CLL remains incurable, in spite of all the progress. So, we do have drugs, and in fact, one major class of drugs targets BTK inhibitors. They target the B-cell receptor and the signaling pathway initiated through triggering of the B-cell receptor. But should we accept or expect that these drugs would work equally well in every patient? The answer is not really, though admittedly they are excellent, they are very effective, without curing the disease. So a lot remains to be done until we reach the ultimate goal, which is curing patients. And we believe that through focusing on these subsets, you can identify mechanisms that are pathogenetically important and that can assist in directed research that can identify new targets for eventually curing the disease.
Are you also using these subsets for risk stratification?
Yes, we are doing it for that. And it's very reassuring that the wider community has endorsed this principle, at least for two of these subsets. They are both quite aggressive, and they are called subset number 2 and subset number 8. And colleagues in different places in Europe and the US and other parts of the world are including this information regarding subset 2 in particular for stratifying patients in clinical trials. So this is a major development. Just consider that until 2018, it was not even recommended as mandatory to test for immunoglobulin genes. So we have indeed made great strides in less than 6 years.
Which are the major findings that you made during your career that had or are having a clinical impact?
I think that, I should probably not be the person to reply this, because I would somehow claim that what I did was impactful. And I cannot be the best judge of myself. But I would say that investing in investing in immunogenetics and emphasizing on the need to consider the immunoglobulin, the B-cell receptor, as key to understanding and treating CLL is what I consider as the major thing I did. I hope it has contributed to an extent into improving how we manage this disease. And I leave it at that.
So, we know that you're also very involved in patient empowerment.
Yeah.
Why is this important for you, and what have you been doing about this?
Patients are citizens. We are citizens. We are potentially patients. So the change from being healthy to becoming sick is so dramatic, it can happen to everyone, and it upturns everything. Particularly in hematology, experiencing how lives can be destroyed even, and not only the patient's lives, but also the lives of their family, their friends, is what motivated me to try and somehow ensure that we move from the current model of healthcare delivery, which is so horribly focused on the physician as God, to a different model that would be far more democratic, egalitarian, and participatory. But for that to happen, you need to do a lot of things, including directly supporting patients, and then finding ways to ensure that physicians endorse the concept and improve the way that we communicate things to our patients. It's not easy. It's not at all easy. But I think that unless we do it, we run a very big risk of disconnect with the way society moves. Because just consider having patients who will be receiving a diagnosis of CLL, or for that matter any disease, and then they are left on their own to come to terms with the complexities of their condition, the practical difficulties, the anxieties, and also run the risk of being misinformed or disinformed. It's not something we as society and we as physicians should accept.
Do you think there is a role then for the patient on the decision of how they are treated?
Absolutely, absolutely. Patients, in the end, it's patients who should take the ultimate decision, but only after they do it in a shared way with the healthcare team. Is it happening today? Not to an extent it should.
So when we invited you for this interview, you said that your career was not worthy of being considered inspirational. After this quick overview of how things have gone, I know it's not all you who have done this, but it's collectively. How do you see your career now?
That's a difficult one, because my career today is, in simple words, I'm fed up of the classic way of doing things. I'm very much into education and training as a transformative process whereby we communicate. And for that to happen, I think that we need to experiment more, find new ways of communicating about concepts rather than facts. So my career at this stage is about ensuring that things become more democratic and more participatory. This requires a lot, also a lot of trial and error for me. And it also requires finding the right balance between what I'm hoping and what, in the end, may be achieved. It's not easy, but I find it quite inspiring. So educating people, and particularly making sure that young people find their own way of doing things through being exposed to different different perspectives is very important to me. Also in the context of EHA.
So thank you very much, Kostas, for generously sharing your experience with us, and thank you very much to everyone for listening.
Thank you very much, Isabel, for this discussion.